Greetings everyone, Nate the Nerdarch here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today we're talking about Deities and Demigods and the Divine Right of Kings and other such things with campaign settings and campaign world building. And with me, I've got a nerd.
I am Kienata, and get ready to watch a really long argument. This is gonna be good. So we're gonna be making up. I said before the stream started, I said Afghania is cool, but if we start from scratch, we'll have more freedom. That way you can give us input and tell us what you think, and maybe we can just whip up an entire pantheon of gods in one night. It only took other people like thousands of years. This shouldn't be hard for us.
Yeah, they've just been crafted over millennia, that's all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm hitting the Create New World button. And we're going to see how this goes down.
I like that button.
And for those of you who don't know, we are using World Anvil, which is just worldanvil.com. And I don't have a word for this. Godling Sandbox right now. I can
Godling?
Yeah.
I already don't like your word choice.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be a long battle tonight.
Yeah.
It's going to be a rough one.
All right. Whatever Kienata wants.
No,
so
whatever.
He gets
whatever
off my back.
It wouldn't be fun anyway. You are a hair on the blue side tonight.
Oh yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little blue. You're a little blue. You're looking like I'm blue, dabble dee dabble bow, and that's all I can sing, or we'll get sued. So, using the powers given us by World Anvil, we will create an entire pantheon of gods, and we are using kind of a pantheon architecture structure.
Yeah, that's what we're starting with. But I want to know the direction you want to go in, because
well, I think the fact that we have opposing concepts for this is going to make the end product that much better, right? So I think we both need to give our 2 cents and just talk about why we have opposing concepts, and then use these genius level people who are smart enough to be hanging out and chat with us tonight. I love you guys. And use them to bounce our ideas off of and really come up with something like genuinely interesting and unique. So you should state your case first. What approach would you take to creating a pantheon?
Okay, well, I'm big into archetypes. So I guess I'm a traditionalist as far as this conversation is concerned.
Right, and tell me what an archetype is.
Okay,
what's an archetype?
An archetype, I mean, we have archetypes in 5e. We've got those for character classes, and they're basically like a direct kind of, everybody kind of has the understanding of what this is or direction it's going. It speaks to them of a, like, some kind of ground level understanding is what I'm going to say about an archetype. So like an Eldritch Knight is it's like a highly tropey, I'd say, concept is having that kind of like wizard knight, or a barbarian, or a wizard. Those are all kinds of archetypes that would be like, they're kind of like set in our minds as things. So archetypes for deities, they've got like an underpinning that makes it whatever they are true. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, so like Thor, do you feel like that's a fair example of like an archetypal deity? Thunder, lightning, has a hammer, makes loud noises.
I'm not super into Norse mythology, so I'm not just gonna. I would say.
Well, your pick. Who do you think would be like a good example of a god that follows the idea of archetypes, or even a pantheon that follows the idea of archetypes?
I think the Egyptians had a really good grasp on archetype stuff. I like some of their stuff. Now, I can't list a whole bunch of Egyptian gods off the top of my head. I mean, there's like Osiris and different things like that, and Set. But I dig their kind of mythos and how it all kind of blends together and instructs. I feel like a lot of times archetypal stuff will instruct people how they're supposed to be, and they kind of understand that is the way they're supposed to be in a way. At least that's my kind of understanding for like a cultural deity or something.
In the Egyptian pantheon, they had a lot of interplay between themes that are really well known, well documented in nature, where say for instance a wolf isn't evil, but a wolf can kill something. You wouldn't call what the wolf is doing murder, because there's no intent behind it. It's just the will of nature. It's the instincts of the creature. It killed something so it could eat. The gods tended to follow that same kind of archetype, where they weren't necessarily always like wrathful or anything. Sometimes they would do something because it was in their nature. So it's something like that, maybe?
Yeah, let's go with that. I like that.
Okay, all right. My direction to go for gods is spaghetti at the wall. I want something unique, something fundamentally different, something that when we talk about these gods, the immediate perceptions are very, I'd like to humanize the gods, very, very Greek style humanization of the gods. And then the gods may not necessarily represent different things. Maybe they're just very powerful beings that exist. Maybe aliens. You could, yeah, not aliens. You could even do a take where there were old gods. The old gods or God created a younger pantheon of gods. They were that god's offspring. Like Cronus created all the younger gods. Mm-hmm. And then Cronus was busy eating his children, so his children whipped his tail and made the earth. And then now there's this younger generation of gods. And instead, like for us, we could do a younger generation of gods that doesn't even remember the first generation of gods. They didn't make the planet. They don't know where thunder and lightning came from any more than we do. They're just really, really powerful.
All right. Well, I am into doing that. I'd say we can go for it. Now, something that you brought up that I was interested in was this. There would be a legit divine right of kings and queens, because they would be like, well, this younger generation of deities, hey, I picked that person, and it's just like a mortal walking around as their spouse, and now that there's an entire race of people generated from that. Kind of like you would have basically like these. I mean, in Lord of the Rings, what was it? What was Strider? I can't remember what his race was called.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, besides Awesome Sauce.
That's what he was.
I can't remember.
Thoroughbred.
It started with an N, and I just don't remember. Numenor or something like that. I don't recall. But anyway, he wasn't just simply the race of man.
Right.
Or he was a different Dunedin. All right, Tom Harris says Dunedin.
Thank you, Tom.
I really thought it started with an N. I must be thinking of other things. Anyway.
Right. Well, go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, so I like the idea. If you want to start it off, I'll totally go with it, like the development of cultures and other things after we've kind of got like the young gods and the mixing of mortals. And another thing, well, then where did the mortals come from? Right.
This is the fun stuff. So
let's crack it open and like start, I guess, from in the beginning.
In the dawn of time. So we do need to, I guess we can touch on some of the other like assumptive premises. So for instance, if the gods are legitimately walking around with people, this creates certain situations culturally where someone says, well, the gods must not favor you. And someone else says, I haven't seen a god in this region in 100 years. What are you talking about? Like, it's not like I drop an apple, the apple hits the ground, gravity is real. The gods are around doing things. You believe in them.
They have shrines, and you could go hang out with them technically if you tried.
Because they're real. They're here right now. Their offspring are running around. Okay, so I love doing everything from one. I absolutely love doing this. Okay. So pick a species, and chat, you guys can get in on this too. Guys and gals can get in on this too. We're going to pick a species that every other species came from. So the gods created a race of servants. And then that race of servants, when they had offspring, gave rise to all of these different kinds of races, all these different kinds of people. Kind of like how I said the gods made elves and dwarves. Once I talked about this, I said the gods made elves and dwarves. Elves and dwarves were friends for thousands and thousands of untold ages, but they were never allowed to wed. They were never allowed to be together. As soon as they were together for the first time, that gave birth to twins, and the twins was one goblinoid and one human.
Okay, well that's in your previous writing,
right? So let's do something new. Let's do something new. Dragons. We could have dragons. And maybe the first offspring from a dragon that was a humanoid was an elf, or giants, and from the giants came all the other races.
All right, I like the idea of the dragons.
Dragons?
Oh, iron golems, the crafter of men.
Yeah. Dwarves are the starting point.
Everything's up from there. They're the rough draft.
Oh, you're funny, sir. Wanti, lizard folk, everything would come from the same species. If we do dragons, what is a species that we can't explain by saying, in the beginning, dragons ruled the world? There
shape changed to whatever they wanted.
Well, it could be that they shape changed. It could be that they didn't shape change, that they just, out of some dragon eggs, hatched. And remember, the context for this is that everything is told as a story. So we're talking about the tales of the gods that were passed down verbally. And then rather than those tales from the gods getting any level of refinement, because some king wants to change some fable so he can marry more women, or some queen wants to change a fable so she can execute people. Instead of that ever happening, which is the normal progression of a religion through time, none of that happened because the gods are here. The stories never changed. They were passed down verbally, they were passed along in songs, and then eventually they were recorded in books.
And if there was ever an argument, you could always just go to the high priest, who could literally just walk in the back and say, "Hey, what's the real down low on this?"
Right. So we can make up. This can be as ridiculous as we want it to be. It can be really far-fetched conceptually, like the entire world is on the back of a catfish. Because the gods told us that's what it is.
No,
vetoed. That is an actual belief. By the way,
but I don't like the idea of it being for our world. It can stay whoever has it.
Aaron Parks has a question. How about setting them up like character options? God of Strength, or its children, competition, labor and war, God of Elements, have a sub deity for each. See, hey old Grumpy, Bards in the Basement. What's up, you guys? I want to avoid saying God of Strength or God of the Mountain or God of anything like that. No gods of anything like that. This dude's worshipped because of war. This chick is the goddess of the hunt. No Greek pantheon here. I want to do, these are people and they're incredibly powerful. They don't represent anything.
What if they're just good at something?
They could be, but how would you, Nate, what are you the god of?
Afternoon naps.
And you are killing it. You have so many worshipers.
Obviously, I favor the Spanish.
But it would be like looking at any person that you meet on the street and asking them what are they the god of. The gods aren't the gods of anything. They are merely godlike. They are divine, but not divine to any specific end.
Okay, so imagine for a moment there's
no.
this really great person at archery, like amazingly great. Never before has it been seen that this person, their likeness on the level of skill, and they happen to be immortal and can do a whole bunch of other cool stuff, but they're really awesome at archery compared because the other guys are like meh archery.
Well, then that god, there are real world pantheons that aren't necessarily pantheons, but there are, for instance, there's a real world religion that in that religion, a god had a bunch of kids. And those kids, one of the kids was an incredible mace fighter. I would be really surprised if anybody knows what this religion is. One of the kids is an incredible mace fighter. One of the kids is incredible at archery. They each have their strengths, but this isn't what they represent. They're not gods of that thing. They're just well known to be really good at that. Better than any mortal could ever be. So it would be, yeah, it's gods without domains.
Yes, but you would then, this is the thing, people will stick, let's say people will stick like, either motivations or their idea of what someone is onto other people and label them.
Right. So if you were going to label a god, and there were gods on the planet, who would be in charge?
Of labeling?
Who would be in charge of everything?
Probably whoever likes to be a librarian. Whoever's the closest to the librarian. Who's the sage?
The gods would be in charge. The gods would literally be in charge. You wouldn't label them as the god of war or the god of mountains. You'd call them king. That would be their label. God, Pharaoh, that would be their label.
Frank, he is an epic scribe. Beyond epic scribe. Godlike powers.
Yeah, exactly. So these gods would be able to grant powers just like a cleric could worship a god. Think Dragon King, but not wussy killable Dragon King.
Go ahead. Not wussy killable Dragon King?
Yeah. Are you going to say Aaron Parks said sorcerer, kind of a sorcerer king feel? Exactly.
Yes, and also Aaron Parks. So no Jeff, the god of biscuits, or Simon, the god of hairdos. Yes, we're going the exact opposite route of Eddie Izzard's gods.
I am so ill with the idea of pantheons. I recently did a project that I had to make. Somebody asked me to help them make Pantheon. I made it, which is the whole reason I brought this topic up to Nate. And it made me like violently ill because I am so tired of pantheons. I want something different. So yes, Dark Sun Sorcerer King route, except not Sorcerer King, not get a spear thrown at you, die. Literally, you walk in the room, you poke it with a sword, and it's like, I'm a god. What did you think was going to happen? Nothing happens. Swords don't hurt gods.
All right. So I'm going to say that that's not going to stop people from picking things that they notice the god doing and wanting to emulate that, or praying to them for this XYZ thing. You're the best at it, so I'm going to pray to this to X.
If you were a follower of the Dragon King, what would you pray to the Dragon King for?
Well, I'd probably maybe want... I guess it depends on what he does. What is he good at?
The Dragon King of Tyr?
The Dragon King of Tyr? Probably not to eat me or my family or suck our life force out through obsidian spheres.
Right, but he's not
mercy.
The god
I would pray for mercy. Or a promotion into the Templar Order. One of those.
Right, but he's not, that's my point. He's not the god of anything. He's just the Grand Pumbaa. It'd be like if I said, replace all the current presidents and monarchs on the planet. There are still monarchs. Replace all the current presidents, monarchs, dictators on the planet. Replace them with deities.
Okay.
Done.
Now, I would think there'd almost be an arms race if they decided to get into a fight together. Because you'd literally be wanting to birth your superhumans. Do you know what I mean? Like your progeny.
All the gods probably have a very specific idea of what they think the world should be like.
I bet they made a rule. I bet it was one of the first things they did when they got in a fight the first time, is they made a rule that you can't just go,
willy-nilly
making babies everywhere.
My guess is even if my guess would be, or I guess it shouldn't be my guess, we're making this. My personal feeling would be that the gods would have some kind of the kind of agreement that only immortals could stick to. You're not allowed to directly act on the behalf of a mortal. So you can tell your army to go kill someone, but you're not allowed to fight in that war.
Well, because you just obliterate everybody else's toys.
Right, exactly. Now you get it.
And then they have to be left with the 12 people that we started with, and this is kind of boring. It's like the reset button.
Yes. Zeus went and fathered babies all the time, absolutely, as a swan and as a shower of golden like dust or something. Yeah, I know. It was
God of fathering babies all the time. That's what Zeus's power was.
Yeah, so that's the idea.
Oh, sparkly dust? I didn't remember that one.
Yeah. You're not supposed to father children, or it would be called siring any children, but the gods would do this all the time anyway.
They just sneak it.
They'd just say, it's not my kid. And they'd be like, that child just picked up a cow and walked with it on their shoulder. It's your kid. They'd be like, not mine. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Isn't it mine? What do you mean we look exactly the same? This is ridiculous.
He doesn't even have a beard. He's 5. Well, why can he lift a cow and not have a beard? Questions that need answering. That means he's not my child.
Yeah, exactly. So the gods don't have to be anything in particular except for powerful individuals with their own set of circumstances. They're not allowed to act directly against each other. They're only allowed to act indirectly. So there would be kingdoms getting along very well, and there would be kingdoms that absolutely hated each other. And because each god has the ability to be insanely unique, you'd be talking about cultures that could be thousands of years old, which I know in role-playing games, you hear about cultures that are thousands of years old all the time. Think about real-world cultures that have actually lasted thousands of years. That's a
pretty much intact.
Totally
intact. Extremely short list.
You got it right. Exactly. So we're talking about tons and tons of cultures that have lasted thousands of years through wars and famines and all kinds of hardships. Some god broke the rules at some point and something horrible happened to that person. That's an entire story to tell. So we do have, someone will have to pick it up. Well, I'm expecting someone in chat to hit us with this. We have a major issue with having, how many hints should I give for this? There is a major issue with having, I have some solutions to it, but there's a major issue with having all of your gods hanging out, ruling everything.
Well, the first thing we said was basically like the super being Cold War, where you're like building up your populace. You're like, oh, we're just expanding naturally. These are just all my semi-divine beings that are my children. So I think that's the major thing. That's one of the major ones is.
Right, and that's a really Loki, funny name for the topic tonight. Loki 861 said free will, and that is something we could touch on. Maybe the more good aligned gods said you're not part of the agreement was no messing with people's free will. And the gods don't directly mess with people's free will, but I made a bunch of gold rain down in front of him, and so he murdered people for me.
Yeah, he did.
He made his own choices. I just motivated him.
It was very mercenary of him, but it was his choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, yes, they have ultimate at the end a choice, but there's the choice that makes sense for their situation and the choice that's foolish for the situation. But that's where you can get a lot of stories, especially if somebody else rewards him for making the other choice.
Oh yeah, we can go so far. There's so much you can do with a setting like this. There's so much. Okay, chat. Here's what we're gonna start doing. We're not gonna address. Nick and I won't address the. Nate and I wanted to. God, I feel like I just said the wrong girl's name. Neil. Nick. I was talking to Nick earlier. Nate is not going to address this. I won't address this right now. All the gods in D&D terms are on the prime material plane. What happens when you die? This is for chat. You guys take it away. And I have some of my own solutions already thought up, but I'd be really interested to see what you guys do with that. So once you're dead, what happens? And I have like some one-word solutions that will fix all of that, but we don't need to get into that right now.
All right. Now, okay. What do we want to say? We want to say there's a dozen, 4, originally 4, and now there's just a whole bunch of mixes and matches.
We could say there was 100 to begin with.
Ooh.
And now there's like 77 or something.
Okay, so some of them have perished or decided to just
some were
no longer exist.
Or yeah. And the ideas have become.
Let me say if there's like 88, and now there is 22.
Well, we need way more than 22. We're talking about covering a planet and gods.
Just laying them on top.
We literally need enough gods to rule all of a planet. That is way more than 20 gods.
Well,
Even
I mean, they could
like
be
Mongol Empire size areas. They'd still be more than 20.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So let's say they were all empires, and then they had like fiefdoms, but those are their children and progeny and things that are controlling those kinds of things.
Well, but they can't directly interact with their children.
What?
They can't say that's my kid. That violates the rules. You're not
okay. That's the rule. All right.
Yeah.
So you have children, but you're not allowed to say you're not. They're all bastards, pretty much. You can't claim them. They're all Fitzroys.
They're all Fitzroys, or Snow, if you like Game of Thrones. But the proper name for royalty born that you want to keep in your house and take care of, but that you don't want to have a claim over, like that child can't be the king or queen, is Fitzroy.
Got it.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna rapid fire these off. Holy mother of pearl, there's so many. Rebirth, like in Druid Reincarnation.
All right.
You go to an afterlife where there is no gods. Reincarnation, the gods are on a plane, so where else would you go but back? Wouldn't it lava under the earth? Souls are dissolved into the weave without a god's call soul. I'm not sure what that means, Cool Spaceship. Gods eat the dead. Nom, 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 nom. Oh, here's a really good idea. This is one we'll probably want to use. Nate turns you into a zombie fungi. That's probably the best one, because
that makes absolute sense.
Only an evil god would do that.
Well, I mean, if your soul obliviates, you go into nothingness afterwards. I think keeping you here is a kindness.
Oh, the ways to make necromancy not evil.
Sounds like necromancy would be just fine in this world.
Old gods rule realms of the dead. Dead people disperse. Gods have learned how not to disperse. The gods take the energy of the souls that are best attuned to them. Reincarnated in the regions of the gods who own your soul. Souls are thrown into the sun because the sun will just eat them or something. I don't know.
Oh man, I like a lot of these ideas.
Souls of the dead are just gone forever. You become a monster. You made like a chimera thing, or chimera, or I heard another pronunciation of that word. Something, and I was like, oh, I haven't heard that version before.
I'm stuck on chimera ever since I heard that British bioethicist talk.
Stop doing bad things to my headphones. Okay. Necromancer Masterclass. Oh, come on, Peanut. You're killing me right now. You hear me? Okay. So we have tons and tons of stuff. My thought on the matter was reincarnation.
Okay.
I didn't have anything specific going for this, but I was thinking, what if we make it so that if anyone could be reincarnated as a god, which follows some religions. So you could literally have a person born that is a god.
Okay. Like,
you start to get into a very karma dharma situation there.
Yeah, and are you an avatar at that point? Like, do they say that basically you're like an avatar of a deceased being, one of the gods that died? That could be the theory of what you are.
I'm not exactly sure how you'd want to do that. I know that if as soon as you were born, like it would be an event. Like in the kingdom of Natopia, Nate was born and he's a god. All the other gods would know as soon as you were born that you were a deity, and they would all show up. Now, some of the gods...
Party! A new one's here.
Well, maybe some of them show up with an army and try and kill the newborn god before it can grow and become possibly another god to have to deal with.
I feel like there would be some intervention in that, but then there would be like this, like you're not supposed to sire any children. It would be like you're not supposed to kill newborn deities.
Right, exactly. There would be a rule for that.
There's like counteracting each other, the ones that want to enforce the rules and the ones that want to get away with fitting the herd.
Right, and Moose said, "What if only the most evil or most good people become gods?" It would be very much like that. Like the souls of the dead are reincarnated, and we can use that mechanic to explain away tons and tons of stuff. If you do the science thing and say, where does a chimera fit in the ecosystem? It doesn't work. It doesn't add up. But what if you say, this person was really horrible and gluttonous and greedy and is rebirthed as a chimera, which is a horrible existence of never-ending hunger and vengeance.
And just probably is painful.
Yeah. You got 3 heads. How do you keep your heads clean? How do you wash your face? Slowly, I've got 3.
Splash, splash, splash. Steam bath. That's how they wash their face.
Do the most neutral become gods too? I would assume it, so we can go any direction we want with this.
Oh right. Now this is the thing. If it's the people that make basically an impact in metaphysically one direction or another somewhere, then you're going to have a cultural bias either towards that, like being just beyond the crowd. So like kind of like if they think there's some kind of hierarchy of how you could become a deity, there's going to be people driving towards that, like, and trying to climb that mountain. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So like entire religions forming around people that want to live a good life so that they can be reborn, say for instance, enlightened or as a god.
Yeah, and then there would also be people that would be cursed by others around them if they were going to be basically kind of like the reflection of that, or more of like tyrannical, or just, I don't know. You know what? You could even say that for the most part, most people believe that living that kind of spiritual good life is going to lead towards something like that, while most people also believe all the monsters in the world are actually just souls returned that were wrong in some way.
Right, and we can totally do like lots and lots of villains in a world like this are going to be motivated in a very Darth Vader direction. If I embrace hatred, if I allow the hate to flow through me and do evil things and think selfishly, I will become more powerful in the next life. Yeah,
it's kind of like once you've fallen off the wagon, just keep going. Just right. Burn all the wagons.
Okay, I like this.
Okay. So that's the story. in the culture. So what really happens?
What really happens? I want that to be what really happens.
Okay, so you want that. So you want the mythos that the culture, the general culture understands to be true, to actually be the truth.
Yes, and I would say for most evil people, you're going to come back as something really horrible, like a mindless creature or a fly, or there's lots of cultural creatures that are. Oh man, there's this really disgusting creature that wanders the sandy wastes, and because it was so gluttonous and so greedy in its previous life, when it's reincarnated, it comes back as this frail thing with like this huge bulbous belly and just wants to eat feces all the time. That's its existence for being a greedy, horrible person. So you literally, and this is why I love this setting, you literally make it so that demons don't have a plane of demony demonness. They're souls that were nasty and bad and awful in a previous life and are on the prime material plane. Yes, exactly. Everything's here. Everything's real. The world is so full of magic.
Now, I like this in several ways, but I think it could also make a really sweet thing like a hollow world in another place. I'm just putting it out there. If it was the containment, almost like a giant, not a demiplane, but like bigger than Ravenloft kind of thing. Like it's someplace out there. Rather than, I think if we're talking about it in general, this is the one and only campaign setting that exists in this universe as far as what we're talking about is concerned, rather than it being one of a multitude. Yeah, this is just like a
very Ravenloft. This is its own place. There's no other place like this. It would be an incredibly unique setting. Especially when you could bribe guards to get an audience with a god to ask for a favor.
Yeah, but you can't, in a way, you can't get a legit, like, magic favor out of them.
Think of it this way. Gods cannot directly act against each other. But if you went to a god and said, give me a sword that can kill a god, if the god was so inclined, they could be like, sweet, here's a sword that can kill a god. I assume it wouldn't be so easy to accomplish that kind of task. But here's a sword that can kill a god, an arrow dipped in the blood of a hind, or whatever mythology you want to do.
They would probably ensure through tests and quests that that person in no way wanted to use it against them ever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that they were strong enough not to have it taken from them.
Also an important thing.
If you were just like, I just like if you were the grumpy, like bad day Loki of the deities, and you're like, yep, I'm gonna make this sword because it's just gonna mix it up,
right?
And we're gonna go with it.
Yeah.
And you'd still want to ensure that you weren't going to be the one to get the axe.
And there could be like one or two gods that are just, all the other gods know those are the most powerful gods. So you don't mess with those gods. They're neutral. They choose not to rule anything. Maybe one of them is like just some dude hanging out in the jungle. Doesn't want to be involved in anything, just exists in the jungle.
He likes to be like panthers and elephants to pass the time.
But we could do like what was that? You mean I can dodge bullets? What's that actor's name? Constantine. Right. We could do a Constantine.
So Constantine. Okay.
Right. So we have the neutral person who doesn't want to let good or evil break any rules or have any advantage. So we have.
You're mixing a lot of media here and a lot of movies together.
Yes. It's so well in Constantine.
It's Keanu Reeves, isn't it?
Yeah, in Constantine. Yeah, Keanu Reeves.
Also Matrix. Yeah.
Yes.
Also
so in
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah. Well, actually, the place I know that that actor, I can't remember. He was like a witch doctor and fought demons all the time. Anyway, that character is essentially this demigod or this god, And if things ever go south, if there's any skullduggery, maybe an evil god finally figures out, oh, I've got this perfect way, nobody will know, I'm going to kill another god. That dude knows about it and shows up. And that's when you get your tail. That's how gods actually end up dead, is because that guy got ticked off about it.
So
the balance is...
So we got the question, does the sword destroy the spirit or the soul in simple terms? You know what? I think it just sticks you back in the cycle, but it like strips you of where you were in the, let's say, the hierarchy of powers. So once you get offed as a deity with this like god killer sword, basically you lost all your points, and you're starting back as a bacteria or whatever actually has a soul in this world.
Right. So, and you could even have really interesting characters. Your characters run into this 60-year-old man who's got all these crazy stories he tells all the time, and you start talking to him, and he realizes that one of the clerics in the party is a cleric to the deity that ended him when he was a god. And so he has all these like crazy machinations and schemes to take them down, and starts manipulating the party like a god would, except he's just a 60-year-old man. He just wants revenge before he dies. Or he goes in the cycle and might lose his memories when he goes in the cycle again.
James Leslie says it kills you and you come back as a bunny. Not bad. Not bad as far as what things you could turn into.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being a rabbit till a fox found me. But other than that, I'd be fine.
Then, you'll just kind of show up as something else. So when you're just like a bunny or something, or a wolf, when you're just like a normal creature, would you say that it's just kind of totally random what you're going to be next?
Yeah.
Because you don't have, it's only, is it only when you have that level of actual moral choice and other things?
Well,
that when it comes into play on whether or not you could become some kind of deity of X?
I love the idea of enchanting the natural world, right? So let's say I died and I reincarnated as a frog, a fly. Maybe I was a jerk in my last life. A fly. After serving time as a fly, I became a frog. After serving time as a frog, I became a snake. After serving time as a snake, I finally get to come back and I'm a cow, and that's a pretty cool thing to be. I'm a cow for a while, and then I come back and I'm a wolf. But I'm a little bit smarter than a normal wolf. Like, we always go to the displacer beast. I'm a little smarter than a wolf. I get some choices on whether I'm going to, because maybe I'm the kind of wolf that lives for 50 years, is very cunning and is slightly stronger and faster than other wolves. And I get to choose. Am I going to live kind of the noble life of an animal, or am I going to slay man and become a man-eater, or hunt, or be not show mercy when given the opportunity to show mercy? I'm given these basic fundamental choices. If I still choose evil choices, maybe I get thrown back in the cycle.
And it's just like a calculus of whatever. It's deity calculus at that point.
Black stones and white stones. The god weighs out takes your heart and puts it on one end of the scale and puts a feather on the other. Yeah.
No, it's whoever is the god of computers or whatever. He just figures it out.
Seskips has an interesting question. Are new souls created, or are they finite?
I think you could have it where they come out of the ether of magic, and as the population builds, you actually lose magic in the world. Because what I like about that is you could basically sliding scale it from high magic to more modern with low magic, and it would be based on the idea that there are just more people in the world, so it's like split amongst all of them. But I mean, could a soul then just kind of descend back into the pattern or the weave or whatever?
That creates a dangerous precedent where an evil god commits genocide to get more immediate magical power to ensure that there are less people permanently.
Sounds like a story plot.
Yeah, but the other gods wouldn't interfere.
Wouldn't or would?
Well, they might, but they're not going to act directly against each other. They can act directly against mortals, though.
Well, no. If he okay, it's kind of like
I'm seeing imbalance.
So this deity's like, I want magic power. I want fast magic power, so I'm going to off all these people that are in my domain because I can, right? Through different means, get it to happen. Civil wars and all this kind of stuff. You know, revolutions that actually just get people killed rather than actually do anything good. All that kind of stuff could happen. And then he has a lower populace. But now he has a lower populace when everyone else is built up. So you better pull off some amazing magic that isn't actually going to affect the deities. Unless his plan is to liquefy, basically, liquefy his entire populace and then try and revolt against the rest of the deities.
I think it would go more of the I built up my kingdom and have a massive army, and now I go slaughter other people's armies and kingdoms to get rid of populace, thereby solidifying my power base and trying to obliterate everyone on the planet and giving me more immediate magical power.
Yeah, but it's not like you could collect it unless you figure out a way.
I would say that there could always be more souls, but I definitely wouldn't say that you'd want to create some form of diminishing returns on magic power based on souls. I'd say don't mess with that's a messy mechanic.
Yeah.
Because of the imbalances it creates. You immediately create a reason for a bunch of evil gods to get together and start wiping out humanity.
Well,
right now they just have trappings of mortality, greed.
Every once in a while, shake up the world a little bit with a big world war, and then everything, settles back down to. They're like, we finally have made bronze, yay!
When the well of souls runs out, the universe will die. So you need to keep it full. That's why you have an apocalypse to bring high magic back. Yeah.
Yeah, rift styles. Take that only thing, take that. That concept of rifts.
Would it be possible for a lower life form to absorb the divine power from a god? No, it would. This is not a transferable thing. This is what's those Chloridians? What are they called? The energy of the universe thing.
Metachlorians and
Metachlorians, right. So this is just the energy of the universe. And if you were good, you could come back as a god. If you were super evil, you could come back as a god. Kind of a karma dharma thing.
Soul margaritas.
So midichlorians. Thank you, Pet Shop. I appreciate that. So next, relative power level of gods between each other.
Okay.
How do we want to handle that?
What were we saying? There was like 3 major ones?
There are 3 major ones that are basically neutral, that just want to uphold the law. They don't want to be involved in man. They don't want to be involved in the squabbling gods. They just want to be left alone. And if they have to deal with the fact that people are breaking rules, that's when they show up very angry and willing to deal with it.
So would those be 3 brothers?
They're
all on the same power level? And it's one of the, older gods that doesn't really take part in anything? The guy that's on holiday since, 10,000 years ago?
What about a brother and a sister that kind of counterbalance each other? One of them kind of leans to evil and one of them kind of leans to good. We don't have to define which one. You guys could define that. Or just because the idea...
they lean towards disorder in certain fashions, like one sliding scale tyranny to anarchy. And also what would be the other one that we would pick?
Death Rose Media said no, siblings are overdone. All right, not siblings. What about a husband and a wife? Or husband and a husband? Or wife and a wife? We can do anything like that.
I don't know if I want to do it just because it's overdone. I don't like to just do flashy new things because it's just flashy and new. Do you know what I mean? Well, I feel like a brother-sister is... Because, okay, so this is the thing. This is where I'm talking about a little bit of archetypal stuff. Brothers and sisters usually grow up together.
Mm-hmm.
Brothers and sisters usually know a lot about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have understandings of what they assume to be the other person, but they never really truly know who the other person, even though they know them better than most.
What if we did twins? These were gods born into the world after this original group of gods had already showed up. Some had been destroyed, etc., etc. These twins were born into the world, and they're upstarts. They don't want any part of any of this mess that's going on. But every once in a while, other gods will come to them and say, the rules are being broken, and we need your help. It will affect you if you don't help maintain the balance. And then the twins are willing to deal with it.
Okay.
Brother and sister twins, good luck of brother makes mischief. Sister makes good things happen. Interesting. It doesn't, the characteristics of them aren't super important. Just the fact that like the twins are basically living like mortals. Maybe they're only like a few hundred years old. Maybe they're still within the mortal lifespan.
Yeah, like a long mortal lifespan, but they're like, they feel like they're in their teens.
Yeah.
Physically, but they're like 100.
Yeah, and they're still doing things. They're still going out and getting drunk because it's fun. And they just do whatever they want.
But they're ridiculously powerful, so the other deities are like, yeah, we can't mess with them or trick them because if they find out, all hell's going to break loose.
Exactly. So ever since the twins showed up, there's been less wars, like more of a time of peace taking place.
So they're what shakes, because they just kind of came out. They were the, reincarnation came out into this birth twin manifestation, basically. They're the shakeup. They kind of, but they leveled things off in a way because it's less chaotic now. So everyone's kind of conforming to the new rules they've set.
Yes, or scheming ways to figure out how to get around the fact that the brothers don't care about anything other than, debauchery and, or they could, maybe they just want to be left alone to study and learn about the world. Who knows? But they're
on like spring break for about another 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. They're super young gods.
Yeah, I like that. And okay, so this adds a level of dynamic, I think, functionality to it, because basically it allows for you to change, and like everybody's getting used to this or trying to get rid of this new, what they might consider obstacle, or just an overall like fly in the ointment of how they've been doing things lately. It's like, I was doing fine, I was ruling this section, I was even gaining power this past 1,000 years, and now I'm just stuck. I was on the rise.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the pinnacle yet. I was gonna make it, and now I'm stuck in this, just where I am, or I've lost power.
What was the Will Smith movie where he was one of the gods? He was basically an angsty teenager for that movie.
I don't recall. No.
Come on, chat. I believe in you. Will Smith was basically an angsty teenager. He was a god. He couldn't be near the other god, which was a woman. Hancock.
Really?
That's what we want. These gods, and Hancock acted the way he did because he had no memory of being a god previously. But this is a perfect
that was
example
Hancock.
of
I
what
totally forgot the actual reason behind that movie. I was just like, oh, he's just a guy. He's like the jerk Superman.
Yeah. No,
but I had forgotten.
Yeah, that story is very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, guys. So these could be very like Hancock style gods where they're just, oh, I knocked a building over, whatever, and then they leave, and then the deity that controls that city is like, the twins were here. You know what I mean? Like, I hate those two. I was annoyed with the twist of Hancock. I thought it was an interesting idea. And I tend to look at those kinds of that kind of storytelling as a kind of a starting place for me to build my own ideas. So
Yeah, rather than looking at it as a complete piece of media, you're like, oh, what would I do to this? What would I do to tell the story differently?
Okay, all right. So these twins are kind of the power balance right now. The gods were unifying into groups before in order to deal with upstarts and people who are damaging the balance of power, or maybe a young god that thought they could get away with more than they really could. But you'd have these. So if you had 50 gods, you wouldn't have 50 gods each with their own kingdom. The reason you wouldn't have 50 gods each with their own kingdom is because this god and that god. So there's this elder goddess, right? And then there are these two younger gods born. Well, she decides that she's going to show up and take these children away, and they just vanish. Nobody knows what happened to them. And then one day there are these two young gods at the side of this goddess. And it turns out that she stole them and raised them. Now nobody can really do anything about it, even though she technically broke the rules.
Well, who's to say she did it, or one of her some people brought them to her, and she's like,
Right.
oh, well, I got to take care of them now. These babies are on my doorstep.
Right. So you wouldn't have just one god hanging out by themselves. They'd probably be hanging out in these weird little micro pantheons.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, are they're basically the more powerful ones who like craft their own pantheon, like their crew.
Yeah, some of them would actively want to be worshipped as gods. So this world would be, oh, it would be so nanners. This is how I like to do it. Love stuff like this. Love it.
I'm like, I was skeptical, aside from actual like God Emperor kind of things. I was skeptical about this direction, but I'm digging the concept so far, and I like the whole reincarnation concept. I think that's really cool put in there.
That was my one word solution to how do you deal with the fact that all the gods exist on the prime material plane. You don't. You just have reincarnation. Done. There's no gatekeeper. There's just existence, the universe.
Chris S. So these twins should have an incestuous jealousy they never act upon. Nah, this is like.
Why are we traveling that road?
I'm just saying that's a thing in several of the deity stories where you have brother sister relationships and stuff like that. But I would say that's like very anime-ish. In a way, there's like a lot of like, oh, but they're really not, whatever. So I would say I would nix that. Yeah, I'm gonna.
That also messes with people's comfort level.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super weird.
So between comfort level and just not interested in going there, I'm gonna say nay.
But wouldn't there eventually be a war of the gods? There would probably be small wars and battles and things like that took place, but. Think about it. If you're a deity and you exist in a universe where if you are destroyed by another deity, you're probably not going to get to come back as a god. If that's the case, you would essentially feel quite mortal, even though most of the things around you aren't able to harm you or interact with you, really. You'd still have very mortal fear of death.
Yeah, it'd be like a pile of regular black ants.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, maybe if I lay down and accidentally breathe you in, and I could die from you.
Exactly. But you'd still be you'd have a very real fear of being destroyed by the other gods. You'd probably do everything in your power to avoid, or at least use as much subterfuge as possible to not get caught. Well, they can't kill each other unless they break the rules. If you break the rules, then the punishment is death. There are no other things. And it could be a minor offense that the punishment would be death for. Just everything, death.
But with that concept, there is, you can say have crime and have the punishment, but does the punishment get carried out? Right.
There might be some incredibly pious god, you've acted against them, and the pious god says, well, we're immortal. You'll learn eventually, and just turns and walks away, even though 50 gods all showed up to say, you broke the rules. It's your time. That god might be like, nah, we're not going to finish you off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it would be in the hands of the offended party. And it would be up to the other gods, essentially a council of these gods, to meet together and decide what to do with that person.
Well, then at that point, it's politics, because there's at that point, it's not like they're going through true consensus on whether or not to destroy one of the existences. They've got their own reasons behind wanting one to be gone or another.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. So it's politics. And politics on a global scale with deities. Yeah. Man, I could tell stories about that until the day I die.
So I would say that leaves a lot open to... that's one of the things I like about when you craft a campaign setting. So when you craft a campaign setting, or when you craft a homebrew world, having a lot of different ways for things to go sideways and strange, I think it's good, because you can go back and revisit that world over and over and over again and tell a different story each time.
Mm-hmm.
And not feel like you're kind of like stuck telling the same, oh, the PCs are going to save the world or do X. That's going to be a really big deal. Well, you could pick 10 or 15 different ways in a world like this where they're doing something really monumental.
Seskips asks, what would happen if a god was killed by a large army or three? Don't think of gods as in there's a stat book with their stats in it. That's not the kinds of gods we're talking about. We're talking about Zeus. How many armies does it take to kill Zeus? You can't kill Zeus with mortal weapons. Just done. Just, he's a god, not some extremely powerful being, like literally a god. So mortals can't hurt you.
So, but then you have semi-divine beings like the progeny of deities and stuff. I'm like, well, what can they do? So
then we can immediately go into stat cards and Hercules and who are the other ones? Achilles, and we can immediately start making the god mortal progeny family tree if we want to. That's totally fine.
I like the one army if that army is Kratos.
Yeah. Politics from the root words poly meaning many and ticks meaning blood-sucking parasites. Many blood-sucking parasites. What happens when a deity dies, though? In Time of Troubles and Realms, when Torm and Bane killed each other, it was devastation. When a deity dies, there are several ways to resolve it. Now, we can make it so that there's some form of calamitous event. Go ahead.
Just to chime in, Torm and Bane actually had dominion over things that were part of the structure of the world.
Yeah.
Not like just an actual physical domain, like an empire. So that was kind of like when you lose the thing that kind of keeps that stuff all ticking and moving like clockwork. That's where you can have those issues. Like something that has in the Time of Troubles. I mean, it's like you lose the god of magic. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that was a thing. It went very poorly for everyone.
But there's no gods of magic here. They're just simply deities that are good at things. And they may be considered, and maybe a whole bunch of wizards and other things ask them for pointers and things, or favor, which could simply be imparting some knowledge to them. But they're not, so they may be worshipped for those purposes, but they're not the gods of those things.
Right.
So, some god that a whole bunch of wizards really dig that dies doesn't make magic stop working in this sense. While Torm and Bane, you're going to have bad things happen.
And you could definitely do calamitous events if you wanted to be like, a god died in this city he ruled over, Pompeii. Sure, why not? Volcano explodes, everyone gets killed because the god fell over dead.
Well, that was his house.
Yeah, that was his house.
And someone killed him in his own house, and so really hot blood spurted out from his domicile.
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Trying to take over the world. Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain. All right, so he was a Nephilim, a child of an angel and mortals, but that's very Bible. We're talking Hercules. We're talking Achilles. These would be the God-born. Oh man, you could have a whole campaign around gods. Well, all right. So every player in the campaign, you roll normal stats, and then whatever you want to have is your favorite stat. Your best stat is a 24, and that's what you get for being half god. Just one insane stat. Just so uncontrollable and ridiculous. How many of you would put that in strength? If it was my party, there'd be all these people running around with a 24 strength or a 24 dex. A lot of people with the 24 dex.
Oh, man, 24 dex would be killer. I would be hard pressed to not pick Constitution.
Paul Jamal, Gilgamesh,
Yeah.
Con 24, Brian Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How many hit points do you have? You have what? How many?
I get more hit points for my Constitution than I did for my actual class.
Yeah, everyone in the group is the child, the progeny of a god and a mortal. Crazy mess. Okay, all right. So, what kind of notes can we take for this? Or are we just not going to take notes on this?
Too many. I stopped at, they offed 11 at some point. And that's maybe they offed 11, and then out of that, the twins were born. So now there's like 79.
24 charisma. Everybody wants 24 charisma. I would say 24 charisma is very GM dependent, because a lot of times I say, okay, role play it. Somebody will say, well, I'm going to try and convince the guard, and I'm going to go, okay, what do you say? They say, no, I rolled and I got an 18. Does that work? And I say, no, you role play it. And they always get that grimace on their face, like, I don't want.
Well, what are you supposed to do with 24 intelligence?
Yeah.
If you still make your players who have a 24 intelligence,
be Reed Richards.
If you still make your players who have a 24 intelligence solve little silly word problems to solve puzzles, you're probably aggravating them. It's like, that's why I had a 24 intelligence, so I didn't have to think about these things.
I would say 24 intelligence comes up in a very different realm. Like, what do I know? Am I smart enough to figure this out? I don't know. For me, it's different. For me, I want to see a little role play out of them. Convince me. Convince me.
I mean, you could still
you
have
had a good
them.
role. Now convince me. That's.
I don't know. I think that's.
Sell me on this. I want a good role play experience. Give me what you got.
And
What's
you
your
can
best?
have that, and it's not. And you can have the character, the player, try, but it's up to the player character on whether or not it actually happens.
24 int build a nuclear submarine. Someone has been launching cruise missiles at my castle again. They're violating the rules.
I just can't defend against these cruise missiles with tiny nukes on them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, for the win. Yeah, I would RP it, and no matter how bad it is, it works. Because you got a 24.
I always take into account high stats for something like that, where I'd like to see some role playing.
I had a sorceress in my game. She was a celestial sorceress, and she on the spot. These bandits were these guards that were really just repurposed bandits. They were mercenaries at the time, not doing highwayman stuff. They're like, what are you all doing out here? And like, we're describing the spirit of trees through art. And that's what she said. And we all laughed at the table, but she rolled an 18 plus her charisma plus her proficiency. So, I gave it to her. And they're like, we don't really understand what that means, but I hope you have fun doing it. Now get out of here.
The 19th said, I have basic mechanics for gods. One, they are all at least level 30, and I basically give them a few abilities that make them hard to kill. When I make deities for a campaign setting, they don't get stats.
Yeah.
If players encounter a god and they say, I do X, I say it doesn't do anything, they're a god. Like a god. Like they made that mountain by thinking about wanting a mountain there. They're god. This is not roll whatever you want. It doesn't do anything.
But their children and other things are not truly.
Yeah, you
divine.
stab those with a sword and kill them.
Yeah, those people actually have statistics. Those people, but like we said, like maybe the direct lineage of deities have like 24s and things, and or a couple 20s.
Interesting. How disappointed would you be if you were born in that world, grew up with that kind of religious culture around you, and realized one day that you were this close to being born as a god, and instead you were half god? Are you kidding me? I was this close.
Well, think happy thoughts. Maybe it could happen someday. I guess at that point it's like great responsibility, great power, and great responsibility, because you can totally go south and end up a chimera at the end of your life.
If Patrick Keller said, Kienata, if you pull something like that on me, I'd probably say, okay, I'm not using my charisma. Instead, I commit suicide, stand up and leave the table. Every GM runs things differently. You just try and keep that in mind. This is just my way of running the game. It's not the same. Some people take a more mechanical approach. Some people take a RP heavy approach. I also write tons and tons of homebrew rules. So there are people who don't like homebrew rules, who just want everything vanilla. So yeah, it's always different ways to do it. Remember, as soon as a god has a child, that child gets a stat sheet.
So, Kips, if two gods have a child, does that create a new god, or are the gods sterile? I would say that deities themselves, I don't think would interact that way for the most part, and if they ever did, it would just simply make lesser beings.
Yeah.
Just as
it's one of those things where people always say, what if a half orc and a half dragon had offspring? Typically the answer is it would be one or the other. It would be either a half orc or a half dragon.
A dragonborn.
Yeah, it would be a dragonborn with no night vision. That's what it would be. And then Zacher said, but it doesn't make sense to invalidate a stat just because of role play. I have had the charisma discussion. This goes directly in the same box as the alignment discussion. It depends on what your GM's like. It depends on what your players are like. Typically, my players really enjoy that I always give them an opportunity to role play. If it doesn't sound like your thing, my suggestion, don't do it that way. Do it your way.
Agreed.
It's a much better way to do it.
These are totally just our two opinions.
Yes.
There's a lot more out there. And I would agree with the not Kienata opinion on that, as far as I'm concerned.
That is the beauty of discussion.
Yes. Similarly, you know what? I did not like this idea of what you're talking about with this, except for that they would rule over actual people in the actual realm. But I'm digging this construct so far. I like the setting.
Oh, Cyber Commando. That was the best Nintendo game. I put so many hours into that. Anyway,
Cyber Commando.
Sorry, Pet Shop said all Cyber Commando. I had no context for the comment. I just immediately remembered playing Cyber Commando on Nintendo. It was Bionic Commando. That's what it was. Man, I love that game. Okay, so I like having small shrines scattered around. Make the right offering to its corresponding god and get a boon until the next rest. That'll be interesting. If you want to give them a chance because of good role, oh, we're still on this? Okay, if you want to give them a chance because of good role play is okay, but if they have high charisma and they still have to convince you, you didn't really finish that thought. Yeah, no, it's just my way of doing it. It's different for everybody.
Just
okay,
like
anyway.
Strange magic system that you've made before, which sounds interesting, but at the same time, not for me putting into 5e. I would do a whole different setting if I was like a system if I was going to use that.
I appreciate you not making me slip up, Pet Shop. I have never used profanity and I hopefully never will. So it's very hard to keep it out of my language when every time I read someone's name, there's a bad word in there and I have to sit and process it.
So. Yeah, so we appreciate the name change, by the way.
I appreciate that. Anyway, so what would you do differently with this? Would you make changes to this? And chat, I want your opinions. We love your opinions. Even if you disagree, we want those too. All opinions are valid.
Well, they're all opinions, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they're valid, as opinions that exist in this space and time.
Yep.
So, as far as what I dig a lot of this concept. What I'm not too keen on right now is I do think while the deities might have a strict no touchy policy as far as what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do in the world.
That's canon, by the way. It's called no touchy policy.
No touchy. I think they probably break that rule a lot. And
yes.
As long as they're not caught directly or they don't... It's kind of like, what was that? Vulgar magic in Mage the Ascension? Like the paradox points. Like if they build up too much paradox, if they build up too much, hey, you're breaking the rules like crazy over here, we've got to do something about it. Because otherwise the whole system fails if you keep going like this. And you'll upset the way the world works in general. Yeah. So basically, as long as you don't try and basically break... If the world's a giant wheel, as long as you're not trying to break the wheel that makes the world turn, then like, we'll just overlook all that stuff, because who wants to get in each other's business anyway? No one wants to be the boon counter. All right, everybody only has 50 boons they can give out this year, so make good choices. You're like, no, I gave out like 7,000, but no one's looking. They were all like really cool little things that just got me more worshippers. Or cult.
Hodgepodge Syntaxia said, what would gods be identified by? Since they aren't concepts, it would have to be their deeds, abilities, spheres of influence, or something else. They can be just like mortals and be identified by their names, by their kingdoms, by the choices they make. You don't need like a symbol for a deity. It can just be that crazy god over there, Nate.
And the deities gathered. On this day they convened, and at the end of the gathering they signed the accord of no touchy. James Leslie, that sounds exactly like it happened.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened. That's canon. That's going in directly into the World Builder article or World Anvil article.
I'm gonna have to put more in there before I get. There's got to be a build up before the no touchy signing.
Well, yeah, Pet Shop, that's an excellent point. I imagine that's got to be a big deal, the no touchy stuff. I don't think another god's going to be happy about this other god having a bunch of spawn. And that's exactly right. They would have to say, it's not my kid, this isn't my spawn, I don't know where this person came from. Maybe a lot of them, a lot of the gods who are trying to have spawn to use, because that would be the ultimate weapon against another god.
They would probably keep the best and then kick out the ones that they think are underachievers. And, like, banish them to other places. So you just have these, like, roving... Not Ronin, but... You know, like, that kind of level. You don't have a master. You don't have... You're not beholden to any lord, but you've got this ability. And you're out in the wilderness, or you're out in other cities, or you're just, like, a vagabond.
Kiwi Felds says, does a god's power relate to the amount of people that worship it?
I would say not metaphysically.
I mean, the two twins probably have no one worshiping them.
Yeah.
People actively avoiding them.
But imagine you've got this stable grouping around you of mortals that are cult fanatics on you. They have whole, your culture is based around the aggrandizement of you. You know, like, there's a lot of directioning towards you, possibly just because you're narcissistic as a deity. But overall, it's just simply that doesn't increase your power in the sense of, because I have more people believing in me, I'm a bigger XYZ thing. It's more of, there's political power in that. There is just you able to move more pieces around the board because they all are beholden to you. All those kind of things. That's powerful. But it's not like I'm like 10 inches taller than I was yesterday because I gained 1 million worshippers. That's not going to. It's not like that.
Just magically grow 10 inches. It would make it really hard to get around my house, but.
Yeah, imagine if you just like quadrupled your worshippers, you'd be in a tight spot.
JJ Hewitt says, are we doing gods or kings that are revered as gods but are in fact just mortals? Nope, we're doing gods or kings that are revered as gods, that are gods, that
rule.
That are living in the mortal world and ruling as kings. Like the best example I've seen so far from chat was the Sorcerer Kings from Dark Sun. Except not killable like the Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah, heart spears aren't going to get them. They're going to just like stick into them, and they're going to take them out and toss them at people.
Sea Skips said, roving people with a 22 in strength. That is the labors of Hercules.
There you go. Yeah, he got kicked. You know, he said he got to go do these things. He went off and did them with his uber strength.
Do it, strike them down, and your journey to the dark side will be complete. Gods should be more concerned with like souls and stuff. They're not. They're concerned with themselves. Well, they're normal, self-obsessed mortals like all the rest of us.
And because of the way we've got the kind of like magic metaphysics working in the world, like reincarnation is like the thing that happens. So that's all taken care of. They don't got to worry about that stuff. That is like the computer simulation is doing its thing it's supposed to do. Yeah, and we're all just hanging out in it.
For the win, can also think of the game Black and White, an excellent example, not quite the same, but an excellent example where you are a god of good or evil. You can only do miracles with your worshippers' areas, and they can't act where there is no believers. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, the favorite thing was to throw rocks at the other guys. It's fantastic.
I was just super nice to my creatures, and it always backfired because they were super spoiled, and like they'd always like turn pink and be they'd like poop. I don't know what it was.
Got a lightning bolt a few of them, and it knocks them right back into line.
They'd always poop on villagers, and I had this super nice monkey that was nice to everyone and would help with crops. Would always make it rain over crops and stuff. And then every once in a while, completely out of the blue, I'd hear screaming, and it's because my monkey would just grab a person and eat them. Just out of nowhere.
It's because you gotta slap him. You guys keep slapping him until he stops doing that.
I didn't like hitting the monkey. I don't like hitting the monkey. It made me feel bad. Adding on to the idea of 24 stat god spawn PCs, imagine them all being the children who were ousted by the no touchy politics. It'd make a good storyline plot hook of seeing who's your daddy. Who is your daddy? So what makes a god then? JJ Hewitt. Super uber divine power. They are not allowed to mess with each other, but they can influence the people around them, the people that either worship them or are their subjects in their kingdom, and they can't be killed. So you're basically stuck with them.
For the most part, they can't be killed. I'm sure there's going to be ways, and that's part of the. Okay, think about it as this is the base of the story, and then from here you can do things like decide that there is a way. One of the deities has decided to smash this whole thing because they don't like either their lot as who they are, or they just want to see the world burn, basically. And they've devised some kind of life siphon or something that involves a whole bunch of wonky stuff, crazy magic doodads and stuff, and they make it, and they stick a god in it, and then the whole world goes crazy because it basically liquefied a deity and turned it back into a rabbit or something. And then everyone's bonkers nuts over this this deity that did this, as well as what has occurred in this, you know, the de-godding machine. I don't know what else to say.
The de-godding machine. Aaron Parks has a question. Do the gods have a lifespan in years to give others a chance to do better? I would assume that there would be some kind of ecosystem of activity that would develop around gods, where you'd have some god born that was a nasty, evil, vengeful deity, and that dark deity would exist for a certain period of time and eventually cross a line, at which point the other gods would show up and smack that deity down. But you could have godlike things still exist in the world. For instance, a Tarask, a Kraken. Maybe that's a god that did some really horrible stuff while they were a deity. They were destroyed by the other deities, and they came back as a Kraken.
That's their reward.
Right. That's their reward. They just wanted power. They just wanted to be better, and then they were destroyed, and that was the end of it. Maybe a Highlander situation. The deities can kill each other and get stronger as they. There's no time for us. No Highlander situation. We don't want this to be a mechanic that the gods could be using. They're gods. There can be only one.
I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away.
There you go. That's my Highlander. He was quoting a song, by the way. Anyway, yeah. Life siphon, so a lifen. So if you go that gods get, but if you go thinking that gods get powers from peoples, then went holy macaroni. That is, the Twitch chat preview is tiny. Then what were the gods doing before the first before the first humans showed up?
They don't talk about that. So no one knows.
Well, this is part of the story. This is part of the entertainment value of creating this system. What was the universe like before that?
Yeah, maybe it was totally bonkers nuts.
Yeah, there could have been all kinds of stuff, just swirling massive energy. Who knows? Maybe it was an infinitesimally tiny point that exploded, and then waves of radiation and matter started to form out of this thing. You could even call it like a Big Bang or something.
That sounds crackers nuts as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, science, I love you.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make up a better silly story than that.
That's some Voltaire stuff. Did God create man, or did man create God? That's essentially we can say, because gods eventually get destroyed by other gods or get destroyed by the machinations of another god, we could say that all of the current gods don't know, other than through literal stories passed down through the gods, about what came in the beginning. None of the current gods know what the beginning was.
They don't know. Yeah, they don't factually know,
because none of those gods are alive anymore. They've been reincarnated.
Or one of them does know, and he's just not telling anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want anybody to know. They'll use it against me.
Yeah, they'll just say I made up a story anyway, so who cares?
Nobody knows I'm the only worshiper of the great chicken in the sky. That's why I've lived so long.
He bestows immortality upon his worshiper.
Yeah. Maybe God can only be killed by their own spawn, so a child of a god might be friends with their parents' rivals. Gods have been thinking about having nice things, then humans came about and mucked up everything. Why would gods have any special influence over mortals if they can't use their powers to directly interfere with mortals? They wouldn't functionally be any different from people.
Okay, so a billionaire comes up and hangs out in a specific restaurant. What do you think happens to that restaurant?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's going to be on the news, personally, at the very least. So right there, God influence, in a sense. You've got somebody with a lot of power, doesn't do anything except walk a talk place, sit down and eat something. And bam, overnight success of
Bob's Taco Shack.
the best tacos in the Northeast side, you know, like
billionaires are not gods. That is definitely not what we're saying.
No,
we're saying
I'm making a reference to power level based on influence in today's society. So someone who can throw around a lot of money has a level of influence.
Yeah, exactly.
And all he has to do is, or he or she has to do is sit down and say, I like this thing or I don't. And that's going to influence people. So a deity who is beyond your comprehension powerful says, you know those guys right there? They've got my favor. He might not do anything for them except point at them and say, I like those people. And everyone's like, wow, you're favored. You're literally, he pointed at you. You're favored by the god. Big deal.
So, and there are many, many ways to consider this. Mostly we would be considering their most direct influence would be clerics. They would have people that worship them that would receive literal spell slots, literal power, like real visceral power from these deities. So they can't. Really? Why not?
Wouldn't they just be like henchmen?
They could have spells.
Yeah, oh, they would. But I mean, I would think it would be more like, I'm aligned with this deity, so I choose to have powers. I have the ability to have powers, and therefore have powers similar to the bent of what I think, the aspect I enjoy about this person. This power.
So it's someone who it's an X-Men. It's someone with the X gene. They were born with the ability to have power, and now their power is taking the form of something like that.
Maybe they're like Zeus's fourth removed cousin, you know, like that kind of thing. They're mortal, but they still have a sliver of, you know, maybe they're fifth generation divine beings.
Brian Smith said, Nate just brain pretzeled me. Alden Jetpace said, I feel like this diminishes the idea of a god. It seems like this is just recreating the game Exalted. There are a multitude of references we could make to this kind of Pantheon design. Like I said before, this has already been done in other games, like Dark Sun, which was D&D, AD&D Second Ed. This was, and I don't think in any way that diminished the idea of a god. It certainly didn't. If you were a player in Dark Sun, you were scared of the Dragon King or the Sorcerer King or the Dragon Sorcerer King, the Sorcerer Drag. He was a bad man. He's a very bad man. Yeah. So I don't know. And maybe it does push it in an Exalted direction. Why not?
I don't want to be the who the heck is that, but I don't know anything about this Exalted game you guys are talking about. Like zero. I thought it's a video game, right?
No, it's a role-playing game about being a deity, basically, in the mortal realm. But you could take it, you could say, I mean, if you really wanted to, Nate's idea would let philosophy clerics exist. Oh, Nate's idea. Philosophy clerics exist like in AD&D. It's an interesting idea.
Why not? So, like, I would think that clerics would just simply be another tier somewhere. They're probably, and wizards as well, if you think about it, they've got the ability to craft and wield magic. But it wouldn't be like, since you're not, it'd be like sorcerer. Like, anybody can pick up a sorcerer level because you must have some divine spark inside of you somewhere. And it manifests as you can transform over time into a dragon, or you're the the seventh generation of the god of luck. So you have wild magic. The god of luck and misfortune.
Okay, Brian Smith said, I mean, if the gods don't interact with humans, then who cares? We didn't say they don't interact.
They don't just
We
break
said they're
everything.
not allowed, they're not allowed to influence free will. But I guarantee...
not influence. They're not allowed to basically...
Control. Right.
And which is a rule that's been passed down to the current deities from... someplace out of time, as far as they're concerned.
The laws have always existed.
As far as they're concerned, yes. But they assume that they are the rules that they follow as deities, one of the only rules they follow as deities, because of the repercussions of not having that role.
Exactly. Old Grumpy, and this is why people don't want me playing D&D with them. You play D&D with me, Old Grumpy. I'll play D&D with you. Maybe gods grant powers to clerics in order to not have an overcharge of their power, so it's easier to control. An interesting idea. You can't mind control. You cannot just declare yourself a god emperor of some area. And it's at least discouraged to eat your followers.
There you go.
Were you eating people again? Tell the truth. You have a finger hanging out of your mouth.
No, I don't. Look, it's right there. It's wriggling for its life. No,
Hodgepodge Syntaxia said, but what advantage would they have over mortals if they can't use their powers as leverage to control people? Money seems more useful than divinity. It really depends on how you use your powers to control people. You can't mind control someone, but that doesn't mean you can't use your powers to influence them. Hey, super, super ridiculously poor person. Come to my castle and I'll feed you and you can go do some things for me. And that requires, like no deific powers or...
and I don't pay for the food because I have people that admire me for my awesomeness.
That just give me stuff.
Yeah.
And hey, farmers, I'm going to make it flood and go ahead and give you guys some awesome stuff to work with this year. Or maybe not make it. Maybe they have this huge ceremony every year before like the planting season, like the Nile River, right? Mm-hmm. And the Nile River flooded every year, and it was a huge factor in Egypt's economy for a very long time. So when the floods changed, there was famine and all these problems. But if you're a god, the floods never change. They always happen because you decide they happen. Right. Thank you, Death Rose Media Harvest Festival.
Brian Smith, can a human willingly let a god control them? I think it would just say simply, you just do whatever they want you to do. You'd be like, yep, sure. Like anytime someone says, hey, could you go get me a sandwich? Yep, absolutely. Could you go kill that person? Yep, sure. Absolutely.
Exactly.
It's not willingly controlling at that point. They're just simply doing exactly what you ask of them. So that's what I would say. It's not, and at that point, that's like cult-like following, which is probably some of them try and gather. There are probably some of the deities that that attempt to cultivate a culture of cult around them. And
absolutely.
That's easy when you don't have to try and do all the things that cults have to do to try and keep the person that's in power, because they're literally deity level power. Then it's like, yep. Can he do any wrong? I'm not really sure, but I haven't seen it yet. And he does all this awesome, cool stuff.
Yeah, look up just kings, emperors, even things like khans, and tell me how many of those people died of natural causes. You create that list. It's an incredibly tiny list of rulers that died of natural causes. Now, if you make a ruler a deity, that list changes because instead of there being 50 rulers over 1,000 years, there's one. And there was a good
James Leslie says that's called a lackey or Augustus, which is a reference to our Spelljammer game. Augustus Gloop is a great lackey. Saucier.
Saucier, it's my saucier right there. Patrick Keller, gods are not allowed to affect mortals, but they can empower and guide, which is open to interpretation. And I really like the end of that, open to interpretation, because every single god is going to be taking their own personal interpretation of the rules that are supposed to govern them. So,
well, I think, you know what? I think I'd like to wrap this up soon.
Okay.
I think we've gone through a significant amount of concepts, and I think I feel like we've got a good grasp on what the deities not necessarily are, but like what their abilities entail and what restrictions they've had put on them through the kind of like conclave of deities, as well as like what can be expected in a world like this. And like we've got like the descendants of deities, the like hybrids or like the Herculean type people. Then we've got the people that are like can make manifest magical effects, whether that's clerics, psychics, wizards, bards, whatever, that have some kind of like spark of divinity within them. And then there's just like generic peasant mortal, I would say. So I would say probably let's say if we're gonna 5e this up to wrap it up, I would say that anybody that's a character class has that spark of divinity, even if it's small. I mean, a barbarian's rage ability, yeah, that's a supernatural effect, so let's go with it and say it is literally a supernatural effect because, you know, they're the 90th generation of one of the old gods. So they are one of the few in the world that's technically mortal, but makes manifest something that alters a physical law. And just by entering some kind of trance, they can shrug off damage. They can just move through combat like some kind of supernatural being. So,
I just want to say real quick before we do the full wrap up, thank you to chat tonight. All of you are amazing. So much feedback, so many ideas. I love this is why I like talking to Nate, because he challenges my ideas, and I love getting my ideas challenged. So thank you everyone for being so interactive and talking tonight and questioning things. And I mean, it just makes the end product that much better. So I appreciate it.
Yes, I would agree, and I was a bit skeptical on how this was going to go when Kienata first suggested it, but and I was definitely on the other side of the argument. I was like, I don't like this idea. Burn it, kill it with fire.
Kill it with fire, burn it.
I have to say, there's a special place in my heart for a weird, crazy world in which the gods walk the earth and their progeny rule over and dominion over things.
It was fun.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. And you can like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow us over on Twitch. And on YouTube, you can put comments in the comment section below after this wraps up if you've got any questions or extra like little thoughts, or if you're watching this at a later time. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.